I know that I'm speaking for all of the church staff, at least, when I say it's really been good to be back in our office wing in the church building this past week, even with boxes laying all around, even with bare walls, even with preschool children and teachers sharing our limited space and occasional sobs of a homesick child. Even spending hours on the phone with Comcast trying to get our internet back. Even with construction, people, and vehicles to work around. Even with all that, it feels wonderful to be walking out of the summer wilderness and to be just on the verge of crossing over into the promised land of fresh air. And beginning next week and progressing gradually over the next 2 months, the rest of us are going to have that same experience. We will walk into a renewed space, a familiar space, and we're going to heave a big collective sigh of relief. We made it home. Nomads no more. We're out of the wilderness. And then we will immediately be in danger. It will be the same danger that faced the people of Israel when they crossed over the Jordan River into their land of milk and honey. We will be in danger of forgetting the wilderness. Or more to the point, forgetting how it was to experience God's gracious presence and help in the wilderness. We see in Deuteronomy 26 that Yahweh knew exactly what could happen as soon as his people put down seeds into the ground to grow their own crops and laid foundations for solid-walled homes and places of worship. They would forget what it was like to lean on the Lord. Like the old African-American spiritual, "Tell me, how did you feel when you come out the wilderness? Come out the wilderness, come out the wilderness. How did you feel when you come out the wilderness, leaning on the Lord?" Do you catch that? Come out leaning. Don't know how you felt, but I felt joy, gratitude, hopefulness while in the wilderness leaning. There was an almost surprising realization I heard some of you voice that we are a strong community with or without a building. There was joy in our gatherings. There was a sense of home and belonging, even in someone else's physical space. There were opportunities to connect with our neighborhood in new ways. There were opportunities to connect with each other. I heard some say that they spent more time sitting down at a table with other church members this summer than they had for the whole previous year. And God has been at work among us. God has given us spaces and times to grieve losses together and remember lives well lived. God was with us when we played together and ate together in our church parking lot and invited the whole neighborhood to join and be there with us. God showed up when we baptized 4 young people into our fellowship. God brought some new attenders into our church family who have not yet worshiped with us in our normal space. God has helped us call a new pastor into our community who has begun working among us during our time as nomads. God has been present in our gathered times of practicing worship, praying, singing, meditating, listening. And God has blessed us in our effort to raise some financial support for the renovation and have, while we're at it, some deep and meaningful conversations with many of our households. We leaned on the Lord and our needs were supplied. Thanks be to God. So let's not forget to give thanks for the many and various ways that God has blessed our life and witness even while we ambled through a wilderness. And looking back further, God has been with us on a journey together now for 65 years. It hasn't always been a nomadic journey as a church. We've only had 2 locations in those years, but we've definitely been a church on the move. The world around us has moved. Our denomination has moved. Our pastors have moved, some more than others. Some have even moved on and came back. Right, Paula? God has been with us every step of the way. Sometimes we've been walking in rhythm with God. Sometimes we've been out of rhythm. But God has been at work in us with our particular history and our particular congregational culture and our particular location housed in our particular building in North Parkview. It is important, so says God, to remember where we have come from, especially when we are getting ready to settle down somewhere. In times of stability, we are in danger of forgetting God's faithfulness in the midst of our chaos. So God set up a special liturgy for the people when they entered the promised land. When they set their first harvest of the land before the priest as an offering of worship, they were required to recite a litany of how God helped their ancestor as he wandered around creation, never knowing his destination, only that he was being accompanied by the God who made him, loved him, and called him to live his life in the service of God's agenda. That's us today. So let's prepare an offering of thanksgiving. On your seat, you will have found 2 small pieces of paper. I hope that you have access to a pencil or pen, or have someone near who has an extra to share with you. And if you can't locate one in your own person or nearby, there are extras in a small basket here on this front table and in a basket in the back of the room. So get up and help yourself to one of those whenever you wish. There are 2 pieces of paper. Take the tan piece now. Save the green one for later. In bold print, this tan piece of paper reads at the top, "Looking back on your experiences at Parkview Mennonite, name something God has done among us for which you are grateful." So here, think about our past journey as a church, the way the Israelites remembered their ancestor, the wandering Aramean. Recall something, maybe just one specific thing, something from our past as a church that you have experienced. For some of you, it will be a very recent past, and that's fine. Others of you can reach far back in our history if you choose to. And if you're visiting this morning, you can still participate. You may have seen something this morning that you want to thank God for here, or perhaps an earlier experience in another community. But you're all invited to take part in this thank offering. So take time to articulate a word of thanks to God. You might even want to begin your words with "Thank you, God, for," and then name a way that you saw God at work with us that you are grateful for. And then after a few moments to meditate quietly and write, we will sing together, sing the journey number 40 as Rain from the Clouds. And after the song, we'll present our offerings in the style that they were presented in Deuteronomy 26, up front in the basket. Let's be thankful to God together.